Now, as some of you might have noticed, I happen to be Scottish.
You don't say!
I know, right? Who would have guessed it? And one of the questions I get asked from time to time is, what's this? Some kind of funny money? Usually from London cab drivers who find it positively hilarious that we use slightly different banknotes in Scotland.
It's shite being Scottish!
Nice one, lads. Never gets old, does it? But more to the point, people sometimes ask me for examples of good Scottish movies that they might not have seen before. Because let's be honest, there's only so many times you can rewatch Trainspotting before you lose faith in the human race. Anyway, I figured this was as good a time as any to take you on a little cultural tour of my country through the medium of film. And the first example I shall present for your consideration is Restless Natives. Possibly the best movie that you've never heard of. A 1985 low-budget film about a pair of young Scottish lads who turn to crime to escape the boredom of their dead-end lives, become modern-day highway robbers, and inadvertently create a national sensation that captivates the country. Part comedy, part adventure, part crime caper, and part social commentary, it was a film that gradually amassed a cult following over the years as new generations discovered it and older generations look back fondly on it. These days it's considered an absolute classic and a film that you just can't help but warm to. And since it's the 40th anniversary of its release this year, fuck it, now seems like as good a time as any to talk about it. The movie kicks off in Edinburgh in the mid-1980s. It's a tough time in Scotland. All the big industries like shipbuilding and coal mining are shutting down, unemployment is everywhere, and there's a feeling of national frustration and unrest. This is where we meet our two main men, Will and Ronnie, both stuck in dead-end jobs, both desperate to escape and find something better for themselves. Oh, and just a little side note here, if Will's dad looks familiar, that's because it's Theoden of Rohan right there. I love how Bernard Hill looked old even when he was young. Anyway, this is where Ronnie hits on the idea to make some of that sweet tourism money for themselves by taking their motorbike up into the Highlands, putting on some face masks and robbing the coaches full of rich tourists. What starts out as a desperate act by two guys with nothing to lose soon becomes a national sensation when the newspapers pick up on the story. Pretty soon they've become modern day Robin Hoods, stealing money from the rich and giving it out to the poorest areas of the city. Naturally the government want this one handled quick because tourism is the only thing still keeping the Scottish economy going, so they mobilise a special task force to hunt them down. Now you might think it would make sense for them to quit while they're ahead, but when Will gets involved with one of the young tour guides from a bus they held up and tensions grow between the two men, Ronnie gets pulled deeper into the criminal underworlds. As the net closes in on them, will they be able to put aside their differences and pull off one last heist, or is their fairy tale story about to have a very unhappy ending? Now, on the surface, Restless Natives might seem like just another breezy crime comedy from a bygone era, and in some ways it's very much a product of its time. The fashions and fads look pretty dated by today's standards, and the cinematography is the definition of gritty, low-budget filmmaking, but it does have a fucking superb soundtrack by Big Country, something I'd absolutely love to show you, but after uploading two different versions of this review and being instantly copyright claimed both times, I guess that's not going to be happening. I love being a YouTuber. But I think what sets this movie apart is that it tapped into aspects of Scottish culture that had never been properly explored before. At the time, it appealed to a growing sense of national pride and identity, a frustration with foreign rule that had been buried away for decades but was finally starting to see a resurgence. And who could blame them, really? After watching all of their major industries get shut down and whole communities falling into poverty and crime, there was a feeling that they'd been abandoned by Margaret Thatcher's government at the time. Will and Ronnie in this case represent that growing national frustration, that sense of rebellion, that feeling of, fuck it, if you won't help us then we'll goddamn well help ourselves. It's no coincidence that they end up robbing tour buses of all things either. The film was making a point about how the country was presented to the outside world like some showpiece put on display. Rich foreigners being carefully directed to the most beautiful scenic parts of the country, the fantasy, romanticised vision of mountains and glens, instead of the harsh reality of unemployment lines, bleak concrete towers and roads strewn with discarded trash. Stuff like that definitely struck a chord at the time, but I think there's something even deeper and more universal at the heart of this movie that really appealed to the Scottish character, the longing for adventure and escape. See, Scottish people have migrated all over the world, sometimes voluntarily, other times, well, not so much. But either way, that sense of displacement is something that they carried with them, and you can see it reflected in the music, the poetry, the writing of the time, the loss of connection to their culture and history, the longing for a homeland that they've never even seen. Makes sense, I guess, but there's also a flip side to that for those who stayed behind. Something that's not all that easy to explain, but I'm gonna try anyway. A feeling of being left behind and forgotten, of missing out on some grand adventure, of somehow being held back and stuck in place while the rest of the world moves on. And I think because of that, a lot of people in my country have this deep desire to escape from the mundane, to see beyond that horizon, to be more than they are. They don't always have the means or the chance to do it, but it's always there, and I think that's what really appeals about Restless Natives. Two guys feeling that same pull to escape the grey buildings and the small world they're trapped in, to take risks, to feel the rush of doing something dangerous and forbidden, to be more than they are. Restless Natives is a movie about Scotland, not just in the obvious sense of time and place, but of character and spirit. It appeals to something timeless and universal, but also deeply personal and honest about my country. And if you've ever had an interest in understanding the Scottish identity just a little bit better, well, you could definitely do a lot worse than this little gem of a film. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.